Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another Meaningful Conversations with yours truly. It's Singinlisa back with another episode, and you know we are still celebrating women. I'm so excited that we get to bring so many different diverse women before you as you learn about their backgrounds and their journey, and you get encouraged about where you can go with the gifts that God has given you. And so before you, we have another beautiful woman, and I'm so especially excited because she has just been a personal blessing to me, and I'm glad to be able to share her with you today. So I want to introduce you to WANDA Anderson Davis. She is a wonderful woman of God, and we have to definitely say she's a great wife to Charles Ray Davis, and so we don't want to miss out on acknowledging your better half and your support system, because we know that everything that you do comes through what God has given you as a great man to stand by your side. And so we definitely want to also say that you are from Harvey, Louisiana. All right. I love that. And shout out to the family and the grandkids. I know you're very, very proud. But I met you as a member of the phenomenal and wonderful and historic Regular Baptist Church in Gretna, Louisiana. And we will talk about all of the great times we've had there and the wonderful things you all do at that historic church. It's a beautiful place to visit, and the Spirit of God lives really well in that place. And so you definitely need to get there so that you can enjoy a service. Ms. Wanda is a part of her community in such a strong and powerful way that we will find out her involvement in the Louisiana Civil Rights Museum Advisory Board at Regular Baptist Church, which has just been phenomenal as we've seen all of the work that they've done. And of course, you know, she is got some wonderful sisters in her sorority, so I know we don't want to miss them. But many, many years that she has served and been faithful to them. Now, what I had to learn is that not only does she do all of these wonderful things in church, but Ms. Wanda Anderson Davis is an attorney. All right, let me sit up and pay attention, because, you know, you got to give respect to the lawyers in the city, right? She knows some things, and we're going to learn about how God has used that in her life. But please help me welcome, please acknowledge Ms. Wanda Anderson Davis. And let me say thank you so much for being a guest today on Meaningful Conversations.
Thank you, Miss Lisa. I really look forward to having a meaningful conversation with you today.
Great. And of course, you have just been, you and I met at the radio station when I was definitely excited about, you know, highlighting what was going on at Regular at the time. And it was all revolving around Black history and the program that you all were putting together. And it's just been phenomenal to learn about all the things that you all do and the work that goes into putting the program together. It's not just, you know, a one-day type of event. It takes a lot of preparation. And so would you share a little about how you kind of go about and navigate, you know, that process?
Sure. Regular Baptist Church in 2012, Pastor Hodge decided to start a history ministry because Regular Baptist Church was founded in 1866, shortly after the silencing of the Civil War guns. And so the church has such a rich history. And Pastor Hodge saw in a vision, you know, to perpetuate that history. So we opened a museum in 2013. And so we have our own history museum, but we have a ministry. And the ministry started with Sister Diane Coleman and her husband, Brother Kenneth Coleman, who still serves as advisors. Sister Diane is actually a historian. And so she comes from Walkertown, where the rich history of her grandmother, who, you know, the town is named after, an African-American woman. So she helped us to put together the museum, or essentially put together the museum. I became a part of her research team. and researched the history of regular along with Miss Kimberly Lee. And so every year we put on a major program. We've had speakers everywhere from the Supreme Court Justice Bernette Johnson to when I met you, our guest speaker that year was Clara Esther, who was the last person to speak essentially with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King on the day of his assassination and helped him until the paramedics got there. We've had Miss Joy Banner. This year we had Janice Kearney, who was the publicist for President Clinton. So we usually tap into some phenomenal people to bring the history to our community. And you're right, it takes weeks, months. We start meeting usually we take off the month of March. We start again in April, preparing for the following February.
Yes. Well, I can definitely say as firsthand, it's just well done. It's phenomenal. It's so enjoyable. And everybody I know leaves out learning a little bit more than they knew when they came in because of the history that's shared. And I love, how we were able to talk back even to some of the guests, the speakers, and just share maybe the parts that really stood out and some of the things that people in the audience remembered about what they were sharing. And it was just so, it resonated so well with everybody because you could just find yourself somewhere in that line of history and identify with all of the sacrifice that had been done and just appreciate even much more where we come from and what's been done to allow us opportunities that, others didn't have before us. And so I have to say, I have just been such a blessed recipient of being a part of all that you have done, especially with Clara Esther and many of us really not even understanding or realizing the impact or the part she played in the history of Martin Luther King and, that moment when he was assassinated. And we look at pictures and never knew that there was a woman involved, first of all.
Right. For 50 years, she tells her story that she didn't tell that story.
Yes.
Because it was such a traumatic event in her life.
Yes.
And so for the 50th anniversary, someone finally pulled the story out of her. And she speaks now to national audiences about what that experience was for her.
Mm.
I actually met her by total coincidence.
Yeah, sure.
Being at the church that Dr. King last pastored. It's a museum in Montgomery, Alabama. And I went to a tour and she just happened to walk in my tour. And we started talking, found out who she was, and we've remained in constant contact ever since.
Yes.
She's a phenomenal person to get to know.
Yes, she is. And I tell you, you pulled another number on me. Not only did I get to interview you and your husband about this event that was coming up, but then right on the spot, you just gave me such an honor and invited me to sing. And I just thought I would lose it, but I had to keep my composure.
Well, you did a great job. We love you. Your voice is really, really phenomenal. And not only did we have you on that occasion, that was in 2020, right before COVID.
Yes.
You were our guest again this year for I guess it's last year now.
Yeah.
For 2023's program. And my pastor was so moved by your voice that he had to invite you back the next Sunday. So.
Oh my goodness. Yes. 3 times the charm.
You blessed us too.
It has just been a blessing. And I tell you, God really just surprises you. And it's just been really humbling for me, but truly a great honor because to be around history of such magnitude, of such, placement in history is just, it's just fantastic. We all want to serve and do our part in the world and wherever we find that God places us. But just to be a part of the conversation and the stories that are told is just something that I will definitely treasure. And just excited that I'm able to still be in touch like yourself, in different ways with these people. So I look forward to what, history holds for all of us. And it's just exciting. When I sat next to Miss Esther, I had to be the interviewer and I just had to ask some questions.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I was just thinking General Honore was even one of our guests one year. The year before Sister Esther, he was our guest. And, I remember you get so close to these people as you prepare these programs. And so he sends me his cell number and says, I need you to keep up with me as I'm in traffic. And so to this day, I have email addresses and cell phone numbers of people who normally I would not have contacted, but for the regular Baptist Church History Ministry.
Yes, yes. And that's just a testament again to the importance of history, because it does connect us in so many ways to people,
Yes.
experiences, and that we may not have ever been able to learn about had it not been for those encounters, for those moments, that God allows those intersections to happen where we meet people, or that moment when something changes and pivots, what we get to experience. And it's just exciting. And so, yeah, I, agree with you how pivotal and impactful Miss Esther's story, was to everybody. I don't know how many dry eyes there were in the house, because her story was just so moving, to be able to hear what she experienced, and really to give highlight to today where we are, and how
Yeah.
important we keep talking about mental health, and we talk about the importance of how people need to be able to speak to somebody or reach somebody or have an extended support system when things are difficult and tough. And at that time, there was no therapy. She was sharing with me she didn't have anybody to go to talk about what happened, to get through the all of the trauma of what took place that day. And so she had to navigate her way through that, by God's grace. And then she even shared how, I think after that, President Kennedy was assassinated, and that impacted her. So, we look at the times that we're growing up in, but my God, people have grown up in, turbulent times that really defined their life. And like all of us, the things that we go through impact how we react in our life going forward to different circumstances. So just amazing to be able to touch history that way and hear how we can still survive. So it's,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And this month being Mental Health Month, it's
Mm.
really, important. In fact, in sorority, we talked about that this month, about it being Mental Health Month. And Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority is celebrating Mental Health Month. And one of the things one of the speakers said in the meeting was, we often ask people how they're doing, but we don't wait to listen for their response. And so we talked about active listening. So when, Miss Esther is sharing this story with you, you actively listened and felt the compassion, because that is a compassionate story that she tells, and
Oh,
how she actually just put it away for 50 years.
50 years. Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. You really can't help but reflect on, the things that she said, and even sort of place yourself in that time and in her position about what that must have felt like to actually try to save his life, to help him
Right.
after that had taken place. And then, that same year, I don't know if I got to even share that with anyone. The same year we found out about her, there was another woman. I have to get her name, but she was at the restaurant and worked there regularly, also a young woman, and had often seen Dr. King and, many other African American, heroes that we remember today, that had passed through, because of course there weren't many places that they could safely go to enjoy a meal or to be safe in the company of, their others
Mhm.
who supported them. And so she herself, that same year that Clara Esther spoke about it, she came forward because she felt that there would be a time when no one would know what happened. And
Absolutely.
she had gotten married, she had children, grandchildren, and she realized, as she saw, I'm sure year after year, the, reflections on Dr. King's life and all that had happened, that she didn't have anywhere that her story was documented, that anybody could say what had happened. And she had as much of a history and an impact and trauma as anyone else, because she was serving them food all the time. She got to see
Absolutely.
them be human beings, got to see them laugh and joke and have an exchange of, words with them. And so for her, she shared, what her experience was like. And it was funny, one of the things she said on CNN, she worked as a bus driver at a school. And when the principal found out who she was, he absolutely lost, his mind that she was such a pivotal and important part of history that he couldn't control himself. And he had, of course, to acknowledge her and highlight her. But there she was, just living a regular life. And just like you said, something happened that compelled that information to come forth so that we all benefit from it, but we still understand the mental impact and the emotional impact that it has on somebody's life. And it takes a long time for that to play itself out and become something that you can actually talk about.
Absolutely. And that's what our history museum is about, our regular. It's about preserving the history for generations to come.
Yeah.
Because our children, sometimes they come to the museum and they say, I didn't know this and I didn't know that. And we even invite high schools, we invite middle schools, elementary schools to come during Black History Month, because it's not just about the history of Regular Baptist Church. Regular Baptist Church is a community church. And so we preserve the history of that community. We have everything in our museum, from things that were from the 1800s, a Bible that actually was used in the church in the 1800s, and we have pictures of the slave house that was across the street from the church. And so our history is so dynamic in the Gretna community that, it's so important that you preserve those memories and those emotional feelings. And sometimes we see people come in the museum and they've lost, through Hurricane Katrina or whatever, pictures of their grandparents or their great-grandparents. And they say, oh my God, you have this picture of my parent and my great-grandparent in the museum. So we see those emotional outbursts sometimes right there in the museum.
Yeah. That is a beautiful museum. I have been able to see it, a couple of times now. And your history goes back, and you said you're 134 years old, is it?
No, we actually were founded in 1866.
Okay.
So our history goes back, we're at, I think, 157 years.
Wow, incredible. And I think I remember hearing you or someone say that you all had a picture, I think, of every pastor, maybe except one, but you have all of the history from the very beginning of the church.
Yes, the only pastor that we don't have a picture of is the first pastor that was the pastor in 1866. But every other pastor we have a picture of. And Regular is such a blessed ministry. We have only had 5 pastors in 157 years. In fact, this year makes 158.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's a rich history. And, I know people listening are resonating with that, because I've been to many other churches who are, have history departments, and they take the time to celebrate their history. So I know I've seen this effort take place in other churches. And so it is definitely worth each church to try to preserve the history of where they come from, so that their members and the children get to see what their lineage is in the church history. And then that also connects to, the family. And it's really incredible to see that. And I know that each person doing that, each church, will appreciate the efforts that it takes. I do hope everyone takes the time whenever History Month rolls around again to go and visit Regular Baptist Church and have that experience for yourself firsthand. You won't regret it, and you definitely will walk away feeling enriched, empowered, proud, and really ready to continue carrying on, the legacy that we have within our own homes and families and churches, so we can keep it going. So then, after I learn all of this about you, then I find out that you are an attorney. So I thought you were just spending your days, taking care of the history and everything else I know that you do in the church, because I haven't been to every service, but I know you all have many departments. But then I find out that you personally are an attorney. So do tell, as they say.
Do tell. Well, I've been an attorney since 1985. I started my career in Washington, D.C., representing the United States Department of Labor, moved back home and represented Regional Transit Authority for many years, was in-house counsel. And I've been in private practice. I was an insurance defense attorney for 10 years. and have been in private practice since 1997. So I do a lot. I work a lot through the Bar Association. I've been the president of the minority involvement section of the bar. I have been the chairman of the Louisiana State Disciplinary Board for the entire state of Louisiana. So I wear a lot of hats. And
Absolutely.
I'm a trial attorney, so I enjoy what I do. I absolutely love what I do.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I am so excited because to learn that you have done all of that, on top of what you do at church just speaks to the diversity of women and why I keep celebrating them because we keep learning about how many hats we wear, how many areas we cover, how much, ground needs to be uncovered so that you get to highlight some other area of your life or of the world or of a particular topic that benefit somebody else, in just everyday life. And so was that an interest of yours growing up to become an attorney or did
It
there?
was.
Yeah.
When I was in the 10th grade, I made the decision that I wanted to be an attorney. And, I went to a high school where that was kind of unheard of because we're talking the 70s. And my counselor wanted me to major in home economics. And I said, no, I want to be a lawyer and I want to go to LSU. And he said, no, you need to go to Nicholls State and major in the home ec department. I said, no, I'm going to LSU and I'm going to become a lawyer. And so to really discourage me, he put me in remedial classes that I had to test out of. But, when God has something for you, no matter who tries to become an obstacle, that's going to become for you. So it was always my dream, and I've gotten to have a fantastic career. I've got to sit as an ad hoc judge in municipal court in Orleans Parish. I've done just about, everything you can think of and wore the different hats in this profession.
That is fantastic. And of course, mentioning that it's amazing how there's always somebody who doesn't agree with your vision, who does not see what you've clearly know you wanted to do and heard from God that this is what he was going to give you the strength to follow and to complete. And so even with all of that, you still were able to survive and to excel and rise above what may have been really a pivotal turn in your life had you done something that you really weren't in love with. And
Exactly.
that is amazing. And so, well, a lot of us will say that we're glad that we don't get to sit in a courtroom. So, so we will say that we don't know all of the details that take place in a courtroom, but what would it be? What can you share with us that we could take away that if we have a situation or we're in the courtroom, what is that like for you to be on the side of defending someone or just executing, what you've been called to do? What does that look like?
I'm actually a civil litigator.
Okay.
We litigate everything except we don't do family law, and my firm doesn't do criminal law.
Okay.
But I have had, like I said, the opportunity to sit on the bench in municipal court, which is criminal. So I have had that experience. I've had so many diverse experiences as a trial attorney. Because I represent both plaintiffs and defendants on the civil side. I've done everything from represent a person, who had a personal injury case that was worth less than $5,000 to doing commercial litigation in the Pfizer cases, in representing a pharmaceutical company. I represent banks. And I tell you earlier, I do church litigation. I represent churches.
Yeah.
So church litigation is some very interesting stuff when you really get into it.
Yeah.
But the takeaway about being a lawyer is that a lot of people don't get advice on the front end. They wait to get it on the back end. And if you had paid that, $250, $500 on the front end to do a will or to do a contract and get it properly reviewed, you're not going to be spending the $20,000, $30,000 on the back end. So that's probably the biggest takeaway that I can give to people is that you seek legal advice on the front end as opposed to the back end. But then I do a lot of personal injury litigation. I do a lot of employment law. And employment law probably, because I worked in Washington, D.C., representing the U.S. Department of Labor, people automatically thought, well, employment law is employment law, but that's not what I was doing.
Oh.
I was actually litigating the Pneumoconiosis Act when I worked in D.C., which is Black lung disease. And so when I moved back to New Orleans, one of the administrative law judges here in the New Orleans district found out that I was here. Well, how many people here know about Black lung disease? So I became a part of their consulting firm so that we could, help them consult on those kind of cases. So my practice has run the gamut, and I truly enjoy what I do. I have and I think you learned about this, that I represent the family of Mahalia Jackson. And so I do some entertainment law on that side. So
Oh my goodness. Well, you definitely are in the position that brings you through a lot of doors and into a lot of rooms. I can.
yeah.
Yeah, you said something that really, struck me, because I do believe as we continue to try to share information so that others learn something that they can benefit from, that is one area that does seem to get overlooked or misunderstood, is writing a will. And would you be able to share why that is so important? Because I think living in New Orleans, people have taken the death and the process of all that is involved with a person dying as some type of taboo, or something that you just don't touch. You just leave it alone. Somehow you think it's going to work itself out. But like you said, it's on the back end that you get all of the trouble and the difficulties that go into trying to straighten some things out that you could have taken the time in the beginning to actually properly put in place. So what are the basic steps that a family should do if they just need to get that in place, whether somebody's dying or not?
Okay. So Louisiana law has provisions, because we have a provision for everything in Louisiana in our civil code, to deal with, it's called intestate, if you die without a will. But you allow for the law to tell you who will inherit your property if you don't do a will. In Louisiana, up until the time you turn 24, you're a forced heir. After that, a person can leave their entire estate to anybody. They don't have to leave it to their children. And I know one of the big things that people don't understand in Louisiana is that spouses don't inherit from spouses. If you have children, the children inherit. And so often spouses will come and say, well, I built this and I did this, but only 50% belongs to you because this is a community property state. So if you want to give your other 50%, if you have adult children and you want your husband to have your entire estate, you have to do a will to will him that estate. Now, he does get what's called a usufruct, which is a right of use of property. But we as African Americans, we tend not to open successions for generations. And we learned big lessons in Katrina, is that when you don't open a succession from generation to generation, you lose that property. Often, because when Road Home came, you had to prove ownership of that property. Had persons done wills, followed through with successions. I do succession work. We do a lot of estate planning work. Trust is a whole nother area that I could talk to you forever about, that African American people don't, really get into, but is a really good avenue to protect your property and keep it from having to go through probate. So that's a whole nother issue. Powers of attorneys, living wills. There's just so many areas that we as African American people need to become familiar with. And our sorority does a lot of free seminars because we have lots of attorneys and judges that are members of the sorority. So we have, I serve on a committee that's called Building Our Economic Wealth. And that's one of the things that my committee does. I also serve on the Social Justice Committee for the sorority, and presenting people with seminars to help you to do wills, help you to do power of attorneys. So there's lots of free stuff out there. You just have to know how to tap into it.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. And I know it is expansive and there's so much involved in it, but that seems to be one of those areas that people hear a lot about, but don't really know all the facts to. And we really,
Right.
like you said, need to become educated so that we can protect our family, the generations. We keep talking about changing generations and making generational wealth and things of that nature. And it does take knowledge and knowing what to do to protect what has come your way and what you want to stay in the family in the future. So I appreciate that. And so I know that there are papers that people can go get from the store. Are there shortcuts to doing some of the things you mentioned, like that still are considered legal to protect you?
Well, I know that, a lot of sites sell documents that you can draft a will. The thing about Louisiana is that we're so unique.
Yeah.
All of the other 49 states are common law states. We're a civil code state. And so a lot of even the terminology that's in the bought documents does not apply to Louisiana. So my recommendation is always, if you're in Louisiana, spend that extra $250, $500 for a consultation with a Louisiana lawyer. For example, I had a family last year to come in, and they had spent the money online to do the legal documents. And all they wanted to do was come in and notarize the documents. Well, I'm not going to just notarize something for you because you're going to pay me $25 for a notary fee. I'm going to read it, and I'm going to tell you what's wrong with it. Now, it's up to you if you decide to fix it.
Yeah.
And so after we went over these legal documents that they had downloaded online and were trying to do the shortcut, we learned that we really had to scrap the document and start all over, because the stuff that they had followed online for a common law state did not apply to our state. Our state has very unique and different rules. So you really, really should talk to an attorney.
Okay, well, we are talking to an attorney, everyone. And so we definitely want you to take advantage of that. And I know that we're going to share information so people can reach out to you. We don't want to overwhelm you, but you are a wealth of information. And I know you're saying some things that somebody's saying that is hitting home for me, because I need to know this and I need to take some action and do some things better than I did before. So I appreciate that. And so as a lawyer, you've seen so much. And so do you have any particular cases that were victorious, that were almost maybe you thought they weren't going to turn out that way, but you said, okay, God did that one?
Oh, I say that with almost every case, because I tend to take on cases that people sometimes have gone to other lawyers who not done whatever they're supposed to do. Or I take on cases where somebody will say, I've been to 5 lawyers and they said, I don't have a chance. But I'm a researcher. I love research. And so I will find that case that will support whatever your position is. In fact, I had an attorney I used to work with, the Willie Gary firm out of Florida. And my co-counsel in that firm said, I've just never seen anybody who's as passionate on both sides of the law as both a plaintiff and a defendant.
Wow.
But, in law school, you're taught that you're an advocate. And so you advocate the position of whoever you represent. And we in Louisiana go on jurisprudence. So what we have to do is research the cases and determine judgments that have come out, sometimes for, sometimes against. And there's always a gray area in the law that you have to sometimes research until you find that perfect little niche that no one else is willing to look for. So yeah, I absolutely enjoy research. It's like my favorite thing to do. And I was sharing with you, we were talking about the Jazz Festival before we went in the recording. And I was telling you that the last time I was at Jazz Fest was because of a case, that they were a defendant in a case. I was representing a plaintiff, and there was like just a little minute area regarding the gates that she went into. And I had to go to Jazz Fest to get the evidence to prove why I was right. And we won that case.
Wow. I love
and there's, I told you I represent the family of Mahalia Jackson.
Yes.
How I got involved with that family was through litigation. It was through a man who took a agreement, and that was supposed to be a talent search, and turned it into a last will and testament, so he thought.
Oh,
But two people can't sign off on a will. It was a contract. But that case went all the way to the Supreme Court before we unraveled it. It's a public case. You can go and read it.
wow.
How we had to go back and get the copyright rights of Mahalia Jackson, because this person decided that this made up agreement where he wrote extra stuff in became a willing interest in the Mahalia Jackson estate to him.
Goodness.
And then took and changed the copyrights. So
wow.
It's a challenging field, but it's one that, often there are many times, and I tell people this, that I pray when I sit down at that desk before a judge, I'm sitting there saying a prayer before this trial ever gets started, that God be with me in that room, because it's not my decision, it's God's plan for whatever he has for the client's life. And I want to make sure that I'm executing God's plan for them.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, that is what makes the difference in everything that we do, but especially what you do. And I'm sure it just gives you peace because you know that you've left it all out there, for him to be in control, to come with the outcome that is right and in his will. So that's phenomenal. And I mean, you've just been involved in so many important cases. And I think what is interesting is how there's so much in the fine line, in the writing, that makes a difference. You can miss that. And I know that we have clicked on buttons left and right when it comes to social media, and we've said yes to 100 different types of sites that say, this is the case for all that we're going to do. And we don't take the time to read it all, but it's a general thing. And just thankfully, we're not all looking for you in court. Because I know we've clicked on some buttons and said, yes, I agree, because we want, the outcome, we want the phone, or we want whatever the product is that we're trying to get. So we click yes, but really important to read the fine lines and find out what we're kind of getting ourselves involved with, and it's amazing with Mahalia Jackson. It seems like a part of her life has always involved someone trying to take something from her that she rightfully deserved, that she earned. It's so unfortunate that things happen like that to people who have such a gift and who are such a blessing to the world, that you can't just go around and enjoy doing what you do, but somebody's got to try to throw a wrench in it and try to take something that you worked hard for. And we see that even in today's time when people are stealing your cars and stealing things that you work so hard for. It's really sad. But I appreciate all that you do in that area. And so you said that your sorority, we want to shout them out because I know that you all are very active in community and what you do. And so how long have you been an AKA?
Oh my goodness. Now you're really going to put me on blast. I joined Alpha Kappa Alpha in the fall of 1979 at Louisiana State University. And so I've been a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. This year will be 46 years.
Wow.
But I've been a member. I am an active member of the sorority. I serve at a regional level doing regional things for the sorority. I have been the president of my undergraduate chapter at LSU. I was the president of the West Bank chapter for 4 years, and I now serve as the recording secretary for the chapter. I serve on the executive committee. But Alpha Kappa Alpha is a community organization. Our motto is that we help the community, that we do service projects, and we spend time educating the public. We are a give back organization. We feel that we are so blessed that God allowed us to complete a formal education, that we spend our time giving back to the community. So like I said, this week is Nurses Month. Nurses in our sorority are actually giving back as opposed to accepting praise and honor for their work. So this is National Women's and Lawyers Month. And so we spend a lot of time doing give back work.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in 1 month. And I think that just speaks to the importance of acknowledging and recognizing the work that so many people do in so many different fields that, we only have 12 months, but we have to fit everybody in and
Absolutely.
give acknowledgement, because it's so important what happens when other people can see that people care, and that, you can make a difference in helping other people to come out of some difficult times, or to, stay afloat where they are as they, rise to do better. So, well, congratulations on that, because that is not yesterday, right?
No, that wasn't yesterday. And, Alpha Kappa Alpha will continue to help all mankind, which is, I started off saying my turn. I never did say what it was, but it's to help all mankind. That's exactly what we do.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, we definitely see the work, and we know that you all are part of the Divine Nine, so that
We are.
a large group of many of the Greek organizations that step up and really show service and provide care to other people. And so now I just want to pivot a little bit, because I know that in every person's life we've seen, as you have in all of your cases, we've seen some situations that didn't look too good in the when they started happening. And so when it comes to the area of health, we talked about mental health, we talked about the nurses, and I'm sure that we give so many hats off to them during COVID, because they were the front line.
Absolutely.
So many situations and circumstances where families couldn't be with their families in their last moments, and when life was just hanging in the balance, and they were the mouthpiece or the connector, the conduit that allowed people to have some last moments with their family. And so they're the doctors, in layman's terms. So we definitely salute nurses. But you yourself, like many of us, maybe go through health issues and problems where we call on God a little bit more, a little bit longer, and a little bit stronger. And so I know you've had some situations when we were together at different events where you shared that you were on the healing side of things. And so do you mind sharing what you've experienced and what God's brought you through? Because you shared a testimony at the service that really touched our hearts.
I absolutely don't. But before I get into mine, you mentioned COVID. And when I sat down with you for the first interview when Clara Esther was coming, that was in February of 2020. By the end of March of 2020, both my husband and I had COVID. And we really thought we were going to lose my husband. We had gone back and forth. And at that time, they weren't giving the COVID test. And so he ends up going into an emergency room and ends up at a hospital in Raceland, Louisiana, where we didn't see him for a whole week because there was no room for him. And so that was probably, me and God became real good friends. I talked to God so much, he was probably tired of hearing from me. But I had COVID at the same time, and I was trying to take care of my husband because he was much worse than I was. But my most recent battle, and it's a battle that I'm presently fighting, and it's a battle that I encourage women to get your annual mammograms, because it is just breast cancer is it's becoming more prevalent. And so, I've told you about all of the hats that I wear. I'm going along wearing all of my hats. And in October, I go for my annual mammogram, and they say, something suspicious. Let's do another one. And, you don't, because it's not me. You think it's somebody else. It's not going to be me. So, yeah, I'll do it. And then that leads to a biopsy. And then the biopsy leads to the big cancer diagnoses. So in January, I had a double mastectomy because it was cancer. And I've had major complications. I've had to go back to surgery in February, and I'm still fighting that battle. I went to church yesterday. I teach Sunday school, and someone sent me something yesterday that said, the devil thought he had me until I lifted my head and said, amen. And that just touched my heart so much, because, you have your own plan for life.
Yeah.
And I have this to do, and I have this case to do, and I have to be at this meeting and that meeting. But God said, I'm going to sit you down for a while. And so since late December, I've essentially been sitting down talking to God on a daily basis. We have these conversations about, God, what will you have me to do? And so it was my lot to teach Sunday school. And I could have said very easily, because my husband also co-teaches with me. And last month he taught by himself because I really wasn't up to it. And this month he said, you need to get back into the word and teaching Sunday school. So at Regular, we have 2 opportunities for Sunday school. We teach teleconference at 9:30 on Saturday mornings. And then we have live teaching in church at 8 o'clock on Sunday mornings. So I think 2 months ago, I did the Saturday class on teleconference, and then my husband did my in-person class. But this time he said, you're going to do your own in-person class. So I talked to Pastor, and because in addition to everything else, I'm going along, and I am such an independent person. I've always been that way. I'm the oldest of 5 children. And so at 9 years old, my grandmother died, my mother being an only child. I became like the little mommy in my family. So I've always been that way. And so, but I called my pastor and I talked to him, I think Saturday night, and I said, I can go and teach Sunday school, but I can't stand for 30 minutes. I'm going to have to sit down. And he said, no problem. In fact, we're getting a table there, and don't make me have to get a liability release against my attorney. Because you're going to sit down and teach. And so I sat down and taught the word yesterday.
Yeah.
But, life throws you some curveballs. You're just moving along and thinking that you're on the top of the world. And health is something that is so fragile. It's like you're here and fine one day, and the next day, when I got a cancer diagnosis, it scared the life out of me because my dad died of cancer. My dad died of colon cancer. And 3 weeks from the date of diagnosis to the date of his funeral. And I think the thing that affected me the most was, how was I going to break the news to my mother? Because my mother was actually the matron of honor in my wedding. That's how close I am to my mother.
Wow. So
it was like, how am I going to tell her that I have cancer? But my cancer was diagnosed at a 0 stage. And you say you had a double mastectomy. And that's what you have to, women have to understand these stages. Even though it was at stage 0, you've not yet formed a tumor. And so the cancer cells are scattered throughout your breast. And so the doctor, at first, we thought it was only 5 centimeters. Then it goes to be 10. And it was non-invasive. But by the time I got around to surgery, which I need to back up, I caught COVID over the holidays this year. And so I had to push my surgery back. So by the time I got the surgery, it had become an invasive cancer. So it's been a struggle, but I talk to God every day. Several years ago, I made a commitment to God that I would read the Bible every day. And, life gets busy and you say, okay, well, I missed it today. I'll catch up tomorrow. And that's what I used to do. But I can say, I think I can look at my phone. I think I'm at 570 straight days of reading the Bible every day, even through 2 surgeries and cancer. I have not missed a day of being in the Word.
Yeah.
Because, it strengthens your faith.
Yes.
As you go along and you see how much God has done for you, that you have to give him the glory, the praise, and the honor to say, God, you allowed this cancer to be detected. And I think when you were talking about the testimony that I gave, I told the story of how I got my cancer diagnosed. I actually took 2 mammograms. On the 2nd mammogram, I was cleared to come back in a year in October. The doctor said, see you next year. I see something suspicious, but it's all right. That doctor called me at 8:30 the next morning and said, Ms. Davis, I couldn't sleep last night. He said, something woke me up. Well, if you are a Christian, you know that something was the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit woke him up and said, you have to go and reread that lady's test. And when he reread it, he called me in a panic, saying, I can't clear you for a year. You have to have a biopsy.
Wow.
And he was absolutely right. It was, God put it on his heart to diagnose my cancer at a point where I'm now, according to the doctors, I don't have cancer.
Yes.
I have all of the side effects and the ramifications of having had a cancer surgery. Some days I have 2 to 3 appointments a day. Tomorrow I have 3 doctor's appointments, but it through the help of God and my faith community and my sorority sisters, my family, my husband and my children have been like the major support system that they do everything. I mean, for a while I didn't realize how incapacitating having that kind of a surgery would be. But, one of the things in my Bible study lesson, Sunday school that I taught, it talked about how we try to act alone.
Yeah.
Realizing that you need other people, especially when you have these kind of health challenges. So.
Wow, I appreciate you sharing that, because I know that everybody who has gone through anything can appreciate when someone knows that they have a support system, when there's somebody by your side that you can call on. But most importantly, that you know that God is listening and that he does answer prayer. And he will always come through, on the side of victory for us. And so we are so thankful that you're still with us, and that you're still fighting, and that you continue to do what he's given you and what he's assigned you to do. And I'll say it like everybody else usually says, you don't look like what you've been through.
And what I'm still going through.
And still going through. You don't look like there's that much going on, but a lot of the work happens on the inside, even if it is through the healing process, even if it is through birthing a new purpose in your life. A lot of the work is inside work. And so that just still speaks to how God works. Even when you're carrying your children, the work is on the inside, and you don't see the results until the baby is born. So we are just going to continue praying, with you, and believing that the outcome will be outstanding and substantial, and that you'll be restored to full, complete health, because he knows that you are willing to testify of his goodness and let somebody else know that he can do it for them the same way that he's done it for you. So I appreciate that. Really, really do. And so have you come to a point where there's been like a process that you go through when you may have a low moment, or is there a conversation you have with yourself that you kind of pull up your bootstraps and you get back on the right side of things?
Absolutely. That happens often, especially for a person who was so busy. And you mentioned the Civil Rights Advisory Board. It's actually not through the church. The Civil Rights Advisory Board that I serve on is actually a Louisiana State Museum board. And we opened in October the first Civil Rights Museum in Louisiana. Our interim museum is in the Convention Center. And so that's the board on which I serve. I serve as the secretary of the board. And so, I'm constantly, it's like, I need to be at board meeting because I'm the secretary. But God put you in a place to where you have to get somebody else to fill in for you while you're not there. And, every organization that I've served in has been such a blessing. I serve on a board of a community organization called Tea Time Etiquette for Girls. And we teach young girls etiquette through that organization. So, but there comes a time in your life where you realize that you're replaceable, at least for a little while.
What is the significance of the Civil Rights Museum? Because we do have other museums in the city that reflect a part of our history and tell, the stories that we may not know. What's the significance of this new one that is now here in New Orleans?
So in 2019, the Louisiana legislature actually put a statute on the book that required Louisiana to build a civil rights museum. The Civil Rights Museum actually tells the story of the civil rights struggle And it didn't just start in 1950 or 1960. The civil rights story starts right after slavery. And so we take the story from, slavery all the way through present to tell about the struggle of the civil rights of people. And it's not just an African American civil rights story. Civil rights have been violated in multiple cultures. And so we tell the over-encompassing story, and we make it relate to Louisiana and how things happened in Louisiana. But, it's the desegregation, it's segregation lunch counters, it's present day legislature, it's the new splitting of the city of Baton Rouge, which will probably become a new story in the museum, into St. George. And my brother finding out that he lives in St. George now, he doesn't live in Baton Rouge. So.
Oh no. So he's going to need your service too.
Yeah, he's going to need me.
Oh my goodness. Wow. And
so that's what the Civil Rights Museum in Louisiana, it's about telling the stories of the struggles of Louisianians and their civil rights violations and how you repair those violations.
And so this coming together now is over some time. So the statute was in place, but it's just now becoming realized?
The statute was in place, like I said, since it's been in place for a long time.
Yeah.
And 1999, the statute went on the books. There was or is a civil rights board. It's called the Louisiana Civil Rights Museum Advisory Board, and that's the board on which I serve. And they have been working for years against a lot of, struggle, pushback. But finally, we have the interim museum, and the blueprint, supposedly, of the convention center will encompass the real museum. So this is only the introductory museum. It's actually in Hall A of the convention center as you walk into the convention center.
Yes. So there will be a permanent home. I do know that is the goal, but it will also be at the convention center. It will remain.
That is presently the proposal.
Okay.
That it be added on when they do the expansion of the civil rights of the convention center towards, the other end. And but we're still in the process of, final negotiations and all of that. But it's a public board. So publicly, we have to tell the public what's going on. The public is actually invited to attend our meetings. Our meetings are on the third Tuesday of the month. And we do put them on the website, the state website, so that persons can attend should they desire to attend.
Oh, wonderful.
And you asked me about whether there are moments when you get really down. There are moments that you get really down because you miss all of those things that, you think that the world could not do without you. You realize that they can. And I remember before I had surgery, one of the things that through the Benson Cancer Center, they offer psychological counseling. And I said, I don't need psychological counseling. But after talking to an oncology specialist, you realize that you do, because it's how do you prioritize the things that you used to do and that you can't do anymore? And are you going to fill those voids in your life?
Yeah.
And so to me, I filled the void in my life through my spiritual side. I'm in the process now of rereading the Bible for the second time, the whole Bible. And I spend a lot of time talking to God, like every night before my husband has to change bandages for me. That's another part of, there's a pride side of you that I never thought that, I'd have to have these bandage changes every day. And I've been doing this since January the 18th, and we're still doing it. Wow. Because of the side effects and complications of certain kinds of medications. So getting back to doing the things that I do. There are clients that I take a personal interest and responsibility for my clients. And so I have some deadlines that are crucial because that's the world that we live in. So I have one next week. And even though I shouldn't be back at work, I've gone back to at least working from home to be able to meet that deadline because I don't want to let that client down.
Yeah.
So as an attorney, it's more than just, your family that you have to worry about. It's my clients I have to worry about. I have a mother who's 85 years old that I have to worry about. I have a sister who has done a remarkable job moving in to take care of my mom. But I talk to her every day because, she's so worried about me. And
Yeah.
so I'm trying to reassure her that I'm okay, even though I'm not some days.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm not going to tell her I'm not.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we definitely don't want mom to worry more than they need to, but of course
Mhm.
they have that instinct and they know, they know their child.
Yep. Well, she knows, she definitely knows me because I literally talk to my mom every day. And so we make it a point every day. And if I haven't called her by like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, she's going to call me and say, hey, what's going on?
Yeah. So you can't go too far without her saying, okay, well, let's send out the crew. We got to find her. Let's find out
Look,
what's going on.
wherever I am in the world, she will know where I am. For
Yeah.
my 50th birthday, I wanted to go to Paris instead of having a party. And so I told mom, I said, we're going to go to Paris for my 50th birthday. What do you think about, would you like to come? She said, would I like to come? If there wasn't any me, would there be a you?
She said, absolutely. Like we are joined at the hip.
Exactly.
Right?
So mom packed her bags and she went too.
I love it. I love it. She said, I'm not missing out.
Not a minute.
Yeah. Well, a lot of health crises are connected to stress. And I know that you do have a full plate of things that you're doing. Have you learned ways to de-stress your life or reprioritize things that may have, been adding to some of the stress that maybe you've been experiencing? Or how have you changed your life since having this diagnosis and having to go through this healing process?
Well, since having the diagnoses, I've learned a lot. I've learned better eating habits. I've learned that there's some things that just you have to be patient about. I've learned patience. That's probably the biggest thing I've learned through this whole journey,
Yeah.
is that everything isn't going to happen overnight. And like you, I actually sing as well. I sing in my church choir, and I truly miss that. But my church choir still sends me my recordings to learn the songs every week. So that's a part of my journey, is doing my gospel music. And yesterday in church, a young lady and I who do a duet together, she sung the whole song, and I sat there. I probably was singing louder than
Say,
I was like, wait a minute, I'm not leading today.
It's automatic. It just came out.
Just automatically came out. I was singing the lead part.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When it's a part of you, it just comes out. And so you feel it, you know exactly where to interject everything that you feel. And then the
Mhm.
spirit just moves and you have to be obedient. And I do
Yep.
definitely understand that. So, oh my goodness, this has just been phenomenal. I could go on because there's so many elements to your life and so many parts to you. And I know your pastor is just smiling because he said, yep, that's my member.
Well, I
Absolutely.
know he is. And in fact, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because one of the things that we wanted to do, and I was telling my pastor that I was going to have this meeting with you. And so he wants to make sure that I invite everybody to experiencing the power of meditation. It's a conference that's free at Regular Baptist Church. It's going to be June the 23rd through the 24th this year. Registration is free. You can register for free at etpom.org. And you just go down to the bottom of the website, and you can register for free. Starting on August 22nd, there's even a children's conference this year. So you can even register your children to be involved in the conference. So there are speakers from around the country coming in to give presentations. So I hope that, your listening audience, as well as you, can join us for this conference. which is the theme this year is 911, My Mind.
Mm,
So
yes.
it's going to deal with the emotional side of what we go through at this conference. There are going to be some phenomenal preachers, some teachers, psychologists, psychiatrists, the medical profession that's going to come in and spend time for free to
Yeah.
talk to you about mental health.
Wow, that sounds wonderful. I know you all have been talking about it for a while, and so it is definitely something everyone should look forward to attending. I'm going to have a flyer right on the screen as we talk so that everybody can get that information again as well, and in the show notes so that you can just, click on the link or go to where you're able to achieve, receive the paper and register. So everyone, you're encouraged to register because, meditation is so important. And the Bible even tells us that, what we think about makes a difference in how we act and what we do in our everyday life. And that's why we have to put on the mind of Christ and think about things differently every day. And it's just not something that you take for granted and put on the side and think that, well, this is it. No, this is a daily walk, a daily exercise that has to take place if we want that real proper mental health that really allows us to achieve the success that we want to with all the things that we have to do. Because we're all busy. We all have a lot going on. But I think I heard Joyce Meyer or someone say, we can be busy, but are you being productive? And that's
Absolutely.
a big difference when you're just sort of spinning your wheels doing a whole lot of things, but is it really benefiting the purpose that it, is designed for and for what you're trying to do? So I think that what you're doing is just fantastic and phenomenal. We're going to have to get you back. I might have to do a couples edition so we can get Mr. Anderson.
Oh, it's Mr. Davis. Don't you get in trouble today, girl.
That look. It was like, oh, wait a minute. Now I should change my name. We have to get the better half on so that he can highlight all of the things, because I know he's extremely proud of you, and really you guys are a beautiful couple, and I have had the pleasure of being with you. And so it's always wonderful to get that inspiration from people who know that they have to depend on each other and definitely depend on God to survive in all of the challenges that you have had to face, and that life still he has waiting for you. So I know that it's going to be you two together to do a lot of great work. And shout out to the Regular Baptist Church, who is, I always say, not a regular church at all. You all do a wonderful job at all of the things you do. And I believe that you all have a heart of dedication that is so evident in everything that you do and that you present. So I do applaud you as a congregation and a church and the pastor. And I pray that you all continue to do all of the great things you're doing and keep that legacy going in the history section of what Regular Baptist Church represents, I'm sure, in the community and around the world. And so I look forward to all of the other programs that are coming and the other people that are going to be a part of the history, the session that you have the next time is going to be exciting. And so what are your final words? I always ask people, when you look back as a little girl, what does the adult today, what do you say to the Wanda who was maybe navigating her way through, who was sure about what she wanted to do, but maybe there was a moment and you needed a little nudge to kind of keep going? What do you think about that young lady compared to today?
Wow, that's a really powerful thing to think about. And I think one of probably, I always say one of my biggest accomplishments in life was, while I maneuvered this career, was to have children. And so now, I see my children who have the kind of drive that I have, that my husband has. And I don't think I shared this with you, but my son is 27 and he is running as a candidate for the United States House of Representatives in District 2.
Wow.
So we're about to start a new journey. His lunch is next week, I think week after next, on May the 23rd. So hopefully I'm better, because I want to be able to help my child as he starts this journey. I have a daughter who's a school teacher, and she invests her time in children. And I think the most surprising thing is my 6-year-old grandson. So I've learned the value of family. that's been probably one of the biggest takeaways from my life is, I thought I wanted to be this corporate attorney and do all of this stuff. But I know as I was building my career, people would say, well, you can afford to hire a nanny. And I'd always tell them, God didn't give my children to a nanny. He gave them to me. And so I praise God for allowing my husband and I to, my husband worked a night job so that I could do the crazy things that I do all day. So somebody will always be there for them. And so I praise God for how my children turned out, how my family turned out. And it's just an inspiration to be in a marriage with someone. In fact, this year will be 31 years this month.
Oh.
He's a spiritual leader in the church. We talk about being equally yoked, and to find that person with whom you're equally yoked, I think is, he's like my best friend.
Wow. Well, that is truly inspirational and something that so many try to achieve. And that just lends to encouragement for everybody who is trying to do what you're doing and have the same type of relationship where God is in control and the head leading and guiding you. And I know that is a prayer that many are praying, and you are definitely proof that, God can do that and make it possible for those who would believe and trust him for that. And so I just say, and I applaud you, and I say thank you again for taking time from all of the things that you're doing and all of the hats that you're wearing. It has been a pleasure to be with you. And so, of course, I do expect somebody gonna call you because they need a lawyer. So,
Hey.
How is it possible for someone to reach out to you? What is the best way?
Okay, so the best way is to call my firm. The number is 504-830-3990. And if I'm not there, we have this wonderful emailing system where your voicemail becomes an email. And so I never miss a call. So that's usually the best way to reach out to me.
Wonderful. All right. We'll definitely share that as well in the notes. And so, of course, everyone, you have been thoroughly blessed. I know that you have enjoyed this wonderful woman. This is Wanda Anderson Davis, attorney, and of course, a person who is wearing so many hats, but, doing it well, doing it in style, and of course, representing every avenue with grace. And so we appreciate you. I love you. And I thank you for the time that you've taken and being an inspiration to me. And of course, I look forward to another time when we can talk. And so we want everyone to be encouraged. And of course, until the next episode, continue shining, because you do have a light that needs to shine brightly, and definitely take some time to have a meaningful conversation with someone. So until then, I'm Singinlisa, and you be blessed. And thank you for tuning in.